this mic the whole time. See, hello? Yeah. Is it? Oh, yeah. I can't hear. My name is John Householder, and I'd like to welcome you all to the town of Farragut and to this presentation. You'll notice it's a presentation of preventing homeowner improvements, pitfalls. The town, we felt like we wanted to do this because we tend to run into conditions or situations where homeowners sometimes maybe get misled or get into situations with construction of their own homes that tend to create a problem. And usually what comes with problems is money. So anyway, what I'd like to do first is introduce our staff. Of course, I'll just introduce myself. I'm John Householder with the town of Farragut, and I'm a code official here. And then also we have Ellie Sievers. You don't mind coming up, Ellie? Just showing everybody who you are. And then we got Adam Price. And we just hired Adam just recently. He's a new code official for us. And we got Colin Cunningham. He is a fire inspector for the town of Farragut. Also, I'd like to mention the people below there. The gentleman next below that is Mark Shipley, and he is the director of our department. And then the lady below that is Karen Richards. Karen is the administrative assistant and the person who issues the permits. If you call our office, that's the person you're probably going to get a hold of first. She's the first point of contact for permits and questions and to get a hold of us. Alexis Crawford is an assistant also, and she backs Karen up. She also does a lot of other things for Mark Shipley. And then another person that's not here is Dan Johnson, and he is actually the fire marshal for the town of Farragut. I guess what I wanted to start with, or what we wanted to start with, was what are building codes about? And basically, they are construction regulations. They're for whenever you want to build something, alter something, repair something, demo a building or a structure that you live in or own. Or it's mostly we're talking about homes, but that's pretty much what codes are for. And codes have been around for a long time. People didn't always call them codes. Sometimes they have to call them regulations. Sometimes they call them rules or whatever. But they actually go back to biblical times. And I read one little article one time about when codes first started, and it went back into ancient times where if you were a builder back then and you built something and it fell on somebody, your punishment was whatever happened to them. So, if it fell and killed them, then it might not be good for you that day. But anyway, that's kind of just an overview of codes. Codes, of course, have progressed many, many years and have gotten much more modern. Issues about why codes and why you have codes and building permits, or I think we've already seen one happen yesterday. If y'all watched the news, did you notice that about the earthquakes in Chile? Did you pay attention to how many people had died in that earthquake? That was an 8.2. That's a major earthquake. I don't know if anybody noticed that, but there was 8 fatalities. 4 of them were heart attacks, so most likely the people, may have had illnesses already, so that the earthquake may have just pushed them over the edge. So really there was only 4 fatalities due to the actual earthquake itself. Some other countries that have learned this the hard way are Haiti. You remember what happened there? They're still learning it the hard way because their infrastructure is very poor. But Japan is another one that went online with codes about 20 years ago, and they now have a similar code adopted that we have. It's an international building code. They have a lot of earthquakes also, and they have a lot of high-rise buildings like Chile does. If you notice in Chile, you didn't see any buildings falling in the streets anymore. Part of what killed people was not just buildings falling, but things falling off the buildings. And so they've modernized their codes, and so has Japan. Japan used to have these massive earthquakes, and they've had large loss of life, and so they adopted their codes for that. Now, we're not saying that your house is going to be that same kind of issue as far as the potential for a loss of life, but could. I'll show you in a few minutes what might could happen. But another thing that codes do is they protect your investment. You know, if you do something wrong and it starts going into failure, then you're either going to have to repair it or you're going to have to live with it. So if you get the codes department involved, hopefully we can help you not have that problem, help that problem not to you know, rise to that situation where you would have to deal with having to either take something down or you know, do some expensive modifications to try to get it in code compliance. The other thing that we're starting to see is insurance companies are looking at buildings when they insure them. Right now they're concentrating mainly on commercial buildings, but I see it being a short time down the road when they're going to say, you know, do you have a certificate of occupancy to your home? You know, because we don't like to insure homes that do not have a certificate of occupancy. And what that certificate says usually is that at the time your home was built, it was code compliant. And not every home's going to have that. If you've got a 30-year-old home, of course, it's not going to have that. But they can start moving towards that direction with newer homes, and down the road, hopefully all homes will someday have a certificate of occupancy. And that just gives them some comfort level that the home is built to some standards. You know, resale is another good thing. You know, if you are wanting to sell your home, I'm sure you've heard that there's home inspectors that come and look at homes for other people that are looking to buy a home. And so, you know, if the home inspector comes out and maybe you've done an addition or maybe you repaired something on your home or whatever, and he finds a problem with it, then again, that's when you're going to have to try to fix it if you want to sell it. You know, it's going to create an issue with value. And so if you can avoid that now, you don't have to do it, you know, when you're in a pinch and you want to sell your home and you're at the closing, you're close to the closing and you're running around trying to find, you know, some way to take care of that issue. There also could be some potential, you know, dangers to that to you that you may not even realize. But we'll cover some of that also here shortly. I'm going to do some visual examples right now. What do you think about some of that stuff? The house there, I mean, we're not real sure what caused that collapse, but it's pretty obvious it's collapsed on the lower side and not above, so that's probably due to an earthquake, and it's probably due to the fact that the house probably wasn't anchored to the foundation very well. This is a deck failure, and most likely this wasn't attached to the house properly. We run across that from time to time, but if you get a permit for your deck, which in the town of Farragut you're required to do, we're going to look for those kind of attachments, and we're going to try to make sure that those are code compliant so that you don't have to have that situation. Now, not only would it have been a bad situation to be on that deck if it failed, but can you imagine if somebody was under that deck? There's a patio roof there also. So those situations can be real hazardous. What I want to do now is just play you a couple of videos that kind of describe stuff like that. Adam, can you run that first? Now, I'll let one of them play and I'll say something. Sound on?
Is there a way to turn the spotlight off that's on the screen and get a lot better contrast?
Yeah, we're going to try to do that right now. While they're working on
hot water heater or it's a bomb. If it's a hot water heater, there's no problem. It just heats the water in your house. If it's a bomb, it fails catastrophically, sending the bottom shooting out, sending the top shooting up. This floor isn't going to offer much resistance to that water heater. The question we want to know is, what's it going to do when it hits this roof? Is it going to make a nice, clean, round hole I can stare all the way to the basement through? Or is it going to be interrupted on its journey into the sky and never make it out of the house? That's what we want to find out. Deep in Buster's basement, changes are occurring in his water heater. Changes that could affect his life. Oh look, we've turned red.
175 PSI.
This is killing me.
Now it's really starting to accelerate.
All that potential is waiting.
325.
Oh, God, it's any second now. I don't want to turn back and look at the pressure anymore. I don't want to take my eyes off of it.
330.
Okay, I'm going to do some live math here. The hot water heater itself is 18 inches in diameter. Now, for the area of that, it's pi r squared, which equals 254 square inches of the bottom. Now, you've got pounds per square inch pressure inside, 336. Multiply that by 254, you get 85,500 pounds of pressure. Let me say that again. 85,500 pounds of pressure pushing against the bottom of the heater. You would fail, too.
335.
You know what I see? I see a hole in the roof, man! Holy cow. Now that's what I call mission accomplished. I wish you could be here for this kind of explosion. Because when the hot water finally blows, you're staring right at it because we know where the zone is. And the thud that comes out of it is so deeply guttural and still warm kind of thud. It's great. Watch it again. Give me some skin there.
Looking at the damage the water heater did to the building, it left some neat holes in the first floor and through the roof, which is no big deal, but looking more carefully, you realize what a shock the entire building took.
Wow. Yeah, look at how much damage it did to the plywood right here.
The cinder blocks that I put underneath the ground floor are actually shattered from the downward push. It actually lifted the entire roof off of its seat and then set it down. You know, this would pretty much ruin your house.
Who ever thought of that? The town has regulations that require licensed people to install water heaters and furnaces in your home. And I've got another video we're going to play that's similar, but this is one of the reasons that we want to inspect that. That's a pretty powerful blast that took place there in that structure. And I'm sure every one of us have one of those in our house, unless you got a tankless water heater. And there's some other issues with tankless water heaters also that we like to look at, but I don't know if there's any quite that dangerous, but like I said, there's issues. If somebody tells you that they're going to put your water heater in, but don't worry, we don't need a permit. We don't need those people from the town fair coming over to look at it. Tell whoever you know about this. But I got another video that kind of gives some more demonstration about what it can do to the structure itself and how powerful it is.
Buildup of steam under pressure can cause many things to go off. But how about a water heater bursting right through your house? To mimic a real-life situation, the roof of the house has been constructed to California Building Code specifications. And the water heater contains no explosives. They turn on the power, hunker down, wait. You feel ready? Everyone's in position? Cameras are all rolling?
Yeah. We've got a nice little red house out there sitting, you know, like everything's rosy.
Rosy on the outside, but roasting on the inside.
Okay, everybody, we're at 300 PSI. That's twice the tank rating. Keep your eyes peeled because it'll go any minute now.
As the pressure inside the tank mounts, so does Jamie and Adam's heart rate.
315 PSI.
Ah, this is killing me.
320.
Any second.
325.
This is excruciating. This kind of stress on a regular basis can be good.
No, shortening our lifespan.
We're going to make them 350. Oh! Suddenly the heater launches and tears roof like it's tissue. You could practically have a 3-course meal while you're waiting for it to come back down.
Look at the house.
What house? I don't see a house. I don't know what you're going to talk about.
This actually surprised me. The house was no hindrance whatsoever to the rocket. It probably would have gone through several houses like this before it stopped going.
It's like a fairy tale come true. The water heater puffed, it puffed, and it blew the house down.
It just goes to show you, there's danger everywhere. Did you know what was lurking in your basement?
The guys inspect what's left of their once charming home.
The bottom of the tank went from concave to convex, probably in a split second. There's a hole in the roof. It had to go through 2 layers of 2x4 trusses in order to make that hole, and yet it totally did. And it did it without breaking any of the 3 windows in here. That's a rocket, my friend.
Yeah.
Not a bomb.
The trajectory and form of the 500-foot-high rocket-like blast is revealed on the high speed.
Oh!
I gotta say, it's more interesting than an actual explosive explosion because this steam is just erupting everywhere and completely disintegrating. It's different. It's more elegant.
Yes, it was like a lovely, delicate water heater ballet, but deadly.
So researchers have found cases of this actually happening.
Indeed, in 2001 outside of Seattle, a burrito shop's hot water heater exploded, went right through the roof, and apparently flew 439 feet into the air.
And there was one in Minnesota where the water heater went through all the floors of the house, continued 150 feet in the air, and it was so bad that it knocked the house off its foundation and it had to be condemned. 2 people were injured. Killed a dog.
It's real bad stuff.
So the moral of the myth is, even though you use them daily, don't take your water heater for granted, for there may not be a happy ending. And test your relief valve.
So what I hope that people get out of this episode is when they see that pipe sticking out of the water heater that doesn't go anywhere and it's dripping water, that they don't go, oh, maybe I should kept that. Hey, look! It's a hole in the roof! I call that. Can I wrap this up yet? Myth confirmed!
Would you have thought it'd be that violent, though? The water heater exploding? Can you imagine if somebody was in that house when that happened? What would happen to them, most likely? And that's another reason. Also, we like to look at water heaters because some of them are gas. So we want to make sure the gas is tied to it correctly. We want to make sure the venting is proper. And if the water heaters, maybe it's a place like a place where you'd also park your vehicle or have storage of gasoline or other flammables, there's some code requirements that have to be met there too. There's lots and lots. I could just go over it forever, but I couldn't go over the whole code book with everyone. But that's some of the reason we want to look at these things. So, if somebody's putting in a water heater for you, make sure they're getting a permit and getting an inspection. I'm gonna do this one. This is the deck failure. I'll show you real quick what happens here if you don't do what's correct to build a deck. This is a pretty quick video right here. Watch this gentleman right. Hang on. See that gentleman right there? He's going to come right over here and sit down for standing in just a second. And when this falls, I want you to watch what happens to him. Pay special attention to his head. His head hit the column. He's still handicapped right now. He hadn't recovered from that yet. That was over a year ago. Several other people are still trying to recover from that. Basically, that was a clubhouse. That was a family of people gathering at a clubhouse, so that basically should have been built to commercial standards. And they were unaware of that. Now, also, could you imagine if somebody had been on the patio beneath it, what would have happened to them? And these are all, you know, due to, you know, non-code compliant issues with the structure. That's some dramatic stuff, but sometimes that helps get, you know, get people's attention. It's people talking to their neighbors and whoever else they may know, and hopefully they'll think twice about it, because we want to help you get your building to, you know, to meet code, but we can't help you if we don't know about it. And so, if you have a question about something, feel free to call us. We'll call you back. We'll help you meet the code requirements if you have an issue, but we don't want to come out after the fact when something like this has happened, because we sometimes have to, you know, look at failures after they've happened, but we'd rather you not have that issue. Anybody see a problem here? There's some more code issues there. See how that joist is cut? Now, they put hangers on it, but they cut the joist half in two. So what do you think the span of that joist is now? Whatever a 2x4 is. Well, you can't use 2x4s for flooring. So that's no span. There's no span value whatsoever. Here's another issue. You'll notice they built these stairs and they run the risers, the direction of the stairs, instead of running the riser this direction. And if you look, this one looks like it might be 12 inches, and this one looks like it might be 18 or 20 inches. And this one looks like it's almost 2 foot. Then we go back up here to this one, it might be closer to 10 inches again, or 10 or 12. And then this one, not real sure, but it almost looks like it might be code compliant, except that it's too high right here. So if you're walking up and down that, what's the chance of you tripping? Because you want your stairs to be consistent, you know, so you don't want them to be out more about 1/8 of an inch per tread, so that you don't even have to think about it when you're walking down it. Your body automatically, you know, adjusts to that tread, to that gate. There you go. That's my next point. You got future codes. You notice there's no handrail here, and then there's no guardrail. And if you look up the other side here, there's no guardrail here. Now, guardrails are not always required if it's a low rise. When you're above 30 inches, then you do have to have a guardrail. But if you're more than 3 treads and risers, then you got to have a handrail. That way you've got a little something to hold on to when you're negotiating those treads. That's a code requirement. Now those are things that, if say somebody were to show up at your home and go up those steps and they fail, you know, you're always responsible for somebody on your home. But if this is present, you might be even more responsible for some issues. This is a footer that is non-compliant. It's actually for a deck. It's sitting on loose fill. You'll notice it's all caved in around the edge of it, so not much concrete action is going to get in that footer. You don't really want to have a stone base under your footer. You want to have good, you know, compacted material. Now, an engineer could come in and approve that if it was compacted properly, but that would not normally pass the inspection. Right now, what I want to do is introduce another inspector that's going to talk to you a little bit about how to choose a contractor, or whether you want to be your own contractor. I like to recommend that you actually find a contractor that's got references and those kind of things. But Elliot Seavers is going to come forward and discuss a little bit about how to choose a contractor and what you can run into if you don't know how to choose a contractor. These are some good starting points. Thank you.
One of the main things we recommend is that you have a licensed contractor. Get a licensed and insured contractor. They can show you proof of it, and you want to stay licensed. You don't want to lose licenses because they don't have much behind them. Check him out. have some travelers that come through, out of state, like a few years ago when we had the hail damage. There were a lot of travelers that came through out of state and came, slapped up stuff and ran. It was hard for some people because of things that weren't what they thought that they would. Check out their ratings, get a written contract, get something written. And usually if they, they're from around here, they're going to have a history, especially if they work in town. All of us, we know most of the things that doesn't work around. Get wary of change orders, expense, things that are balloon after the fact. Get proof of insurance. Never pay them up front. So they need some money to be able to get materials, and it may be say a $10,000 job. You can file up front next round. And we've had calls on that before. Make sure they get a permit and an inspection. Have them get it. A lot of them will let me say, I'm going to get it, before he's not got a license. Well, somebody gets hurt, or if they just leave you hanging, we have no way of chasing them down. So make sure they get a license, have them get a permit. If they don't want to get a permit, there's something wrong, because it's not that hard. The Tennessee Licensing Bureau is on the state website, Commerce and Insurance. If you've got an issue with a contractor, file a complaint against them. It's required by law to offer the contract. Contractor's license is required for projects with total cost of contract license $25 or more. The home improvement license, that's the limited liability ones, up to $25,000. That includes material, labor. So all of that needs to be taken into account. We in the town require an additional or a separate heat and air permit, plumbing permit. They also have to be licensed. They have to be licensed through the town also. And they're required to pull their own permits. They're called their own inspections independent of the building contract. Is this where you were going to take it? Okay. This gives you a rundown of what we kind of look at. Obviously, new buildings, new homes, additions, plumbing, gas, mechanical, anything structural we're going to look at. As far as like some of the accessory buildings, like storage building stuff, we permit them, but we're mainly looking for setbacks, not looking, they're not habitable, but we got a lot of condensed lots in the town, so we'll make sure we're not approaching. The state electrical inspectors work out of the LCD's office. We don't do any electrical, so we have contact there and hanging, flooring, the non-structural things like up here. Not something that we look at. Because you got an idea, if you got a question, something you want to do, call us. We do courtesy inspections. We'll come out and meet you and go through your project and see what you want to do before you kind of do the permit. So that way you've got an idea of what you might want to put down on your plans. Building permit, residential, we're not wanting, stamp engineer drawings, but we want a decent idea of what you're planning on doing. What's going to be in your roof system, what size, how far it's going to span, what's in your floor system, dimensions, what the rooms are, because that dictates like the sleeping areas, whether, there's going to be egress, smoke detectors, and things like that. Site plans, we've got handout condition scales. The reason we do the site plan is also because of how condensed the lots are, to make sure that you're not encroaching on potential setbacks. Depending, like it says here, depending on our workload, 3 to 5 days. The more information we've got, the more thorough it is, the quicker we can get it out to you. If you're trying to call back and say, I don't understand what you're doing here, what are you doing here? It delays it. Once once permits issued, picked up, paid for, we'll do the work and start. Permit holders are required to call and schedule his permits. We require 24 hours notice because we're playing catch up on for the next day. Adam's going to take over from here.
Before Adam takes over, I would like to stop real quick and ask if anybody has any questions for what we've covered so far.
Do you have any handouts of all this information?
Adam's going to talk about that, and yes, we do, and actually we're developing some new handouts that'll be a little bit more helpful for the homeowner, and hopefully that'll be out soon, sir.
Some years ago, when I lived in Oak Ridge, I had a water heater fail because it rusted through. If I understand, it sounds like what I'm hearing here is I'm going to live without a hot water heater for at least a week. If that happens to me, because somebody's got to come here and it takes 3 to 5 days to get a permit.
Not for a permit.
That's for a building permit. For a sub-permit, you can get it over. If you got a licensed man putting it in, he can get the permit the same day that he's putting it in. So he can put it in.
Call, tell you what he's doing.
Now, he has to come by the office and pick up a permit.
Okay.
And all the ones that are licensed, they know how to do it, and they know how to get, they can call you and say, what time can I meet you there? I'll have a water heater, I'll pick up the permit this morning, and I'll meet you at such and such time to stick your water heater in. However long it takes you to put it in is how long you'll be out. But if you have, if you have some work done, this is another thing that's happened with some homeowners, so I just want to let people know this. If KUB happens to be in the area, and they notice that you're working on, say, a gas water heater or a gas furnace, especially if it's outside, and they realize that it's not permitted, they will tag out your meter and call us and say, we think there's some work going on, and we tagged this meter out. Then you'll be out of heat and water heat if you got a gas water heater until the person can get a permit and we can get over and inspect it. And so if that happens on a weekend or on a Friday evening or something like that, I've actually stayed late and got some people's gas back on several occasions because I didn't want to leave them without heat in the wintertime or didn't want to leave their family without hot water. And so if your contractor is not getting his stuff together and something happens and he gets caught, it can delay you. So what he does incorrectly can really affect you as far as how you just work on, how you operate on a daily basis, and not just the fact that if he's not licensed, he may not be doing that work to meet code, which it could possibly endanger your house or even your family. Any other questions?
Is there a time limit on the permit?
They are, and they're different based on what you're doing. Usually a subcontractor's permit to do, say, a water heater or something like that is 60 days. After 60 days, we'll start calling them to see if they finished it or completed the project, because we need to inspect it. We don't want something like that to hang out too long, because we don't, they might pick up a permit, but they might not do the work for a couple of weeks or something. But we want to get out there within the next 60 days and do the inspection. For a building permit, depending on what it is, that can actually last as long as a year. If you're building a new house, it could be a year, and then they can also ask for an extension. if you're doing a modification to your house, like an addition or something of that nature, then we'll typically give you a 6-month permit, and then again, they can ask for an extension if they need to.
So the extension process is similar to the original?
What we'll do is using the extension, we'll ask you how much you got left, and then ask you, you know, about how much time you think you'll need, and maybe we can work with you on like another month or 2 months to get you done.
We've had some go quite a while. People trying to do it, you know, doing it themselves when they have the funds, and we've had some who work with people for a long time.
And we want to work with you because we want you to get to the end of the job is a good job, you know, something that it's safe and that's going to perform like you want it to perform and get your value out of the money. Do we have anything else about us? Okay, well at this point I'm going to introduce Adam Price. He's going to go over the last part of this presentation and ask some more questions.
My name's Adam Price, and we're going to talk a little bit about inspections. What inspections do we typically do? For most projects, we start out with a footer to make sure that everything's done, rebar's in place, you've got a good sound foundation. Naturally, if the foundation isn't any good, what's on top of it isn't going to be very good either. So check that out. And then once you get into the framing stage, you have to have your plumbing, your gas, mechanical, HVAC, all those subcontractor type inspections have to be done before you get a framing inspection. The reason for that is because a lot of times plumbers, electricians, everybody that come in, the first thing they do is they start cutting holes and joists and walls and notching things. So we have to make sure the beams, the structural integrity hasn't been hindered on that, you know, project, and everything's still intact and good. If it isn't, the proper measures are taking place to repair those items and get everything safe. Then we do the framing, and then we do insulation. We have adopted the energy codes, so there's certain insulation requirements and other testing that has to be done to make sure everything's good to go there. Your house is going to be insulated properly. And then we do the plumbing, gas, mechanical finals. That's usually after everything's done and in working condition. Make sure they have shut-off valves in, everything's vented properly, everything's good to go. Then we do the final, which at the final we usually go in and make sure all your smoke detectors are working, carbon monoxide detectors, all handrails, guardrails are in, the final side is stabilized, so that way we can't have an erosion issue or problem. Check windows for egress, and if they need to be tempered, check that out. Just make sure everything's been finalized and wrapped up, everything's in good working order, and you know, the water runs, everything works the way it's supposed to. Other things, other important areas are, I just mentioned the energy code. We do require a blower door test and a duct blaster test. Most of this is for new construction and remodeling. You probably wouldn't run into that very much. Every now and then you might, just depends on what you're doing. And then of course fire codes, which is smoke detectors, CO2 detectors, things like that. Yeah, separation wall, firewall, that's if you're in a condo or a townhome. Depends on what kind of situation you're in there. Final inspections. Why is a final inspection important? Well, no, you can't issue a certificate of occupancy if you don't get that final inspection done and if everything isn't correct. And that's really important because it can hold up a sale or financing, especially if you're buying a brand new home. Or if you go to resell your house and something hasn't been permitted, it can, when it gets to underwriting, it can cause issues there. What happens if you do work without a permit? Well, it could be subject to removal if it encroaches setback lines and it's within, say, a few inches of your property line, which isn't allowed. You could be made to tear that out, depending on what the regulations are. It could be a major issue. Like I mentioned a minute ago, it won't be covered by your insurance. Anything that's not permitted, most of the time, insurance companies won't They could be unsafe or hazardous to the occupants, like the decks. You don't want something falling, or you don't want something to blow up. And they could end up resulting in possibly legal action, depending on what the situation is. If the situation is, what issue you're having. And I've got a few pictures just to run through to show you a few, for examples, or just kind of funny pictures. This is a radon bin. It's supposed to get radon out of the house, but it's full of holes. So it's not really going to do much good. They had to retrofit that door, I got it just a little too close. I think they turned that door upside down so the dog could see out there. I don't know what happened there. I guess the vital sign contractor didn't see the door. I just hope that has a watch your step sign on the other side. Just the stairs or something. And that says it's a handicap, right? But there's steps at the bottom of it. You don't know. Many people can get a wheelchair up on that. If you knock on that wall 3 times, the door will appear. This looks like it was repaired and they cut the loops. They cut the joist off. Right, they're too short. They put that little block in to hold the end of it. And this one here doesn't really look like there's much wrong, but they don't have any erosion control or silt fence in it. So if it were to come real heavy rain, all that dirt, mud, sand, construction materials, all that would go right into the stormwaters and into the fresh water systems. So we don't want that. Carlin's turning to come in.
We're down to the 4th person and we're in the home stretch,
Does
right?
anybody have any questions for me on inspections or any of the stuff I went over yesterday?
Maybe I missed it, but there's something seems to be consistent in your slides. You talked about foundation, structural, plumbing, gas, and you never mentioned electrical.
But electrical has to be permitted, and all electrical is done through the state. We do not do any electrical.
That's right.
So, yeah, the state has their own electrical inspections and permitting division. Everything's done through them.
So you need a permit from you guys and another one from the state?
You need a building permit from us, and then the other subtrades, but the electrical is separate, and it's from the state, so you do need it as well. Yes, sir.
If you have a licensed electrician, does that electrician have to get a permit? Is he the one that gets the permit
Yes.
for your job,
Yes.
for my job?
Yeah, if you have a job that requires an electrician, he is responsible for going and getting the permit, calling in all of his inspections, and handling everything on his end. So it's kind of like the plumbing and mechanical guys are responsible for their own permits and inspections.
And that costs some money,
Yes.
and then he charges me for that permit.
Yeah, usually when they do a job for you, they'll just include all that in the quote. What's being done.
And if if there's any doubt whether there's a permit, there's 2 things you can do. You can ask the individual that's working for you just to show you the permit, because he should have it. And if he says, well, I can't find it, I've lost it, or something like that, you can call our office and we can check it for you also. And the lady I talked about early on, Karen Richards, she can look that up for you, see, make sure that it is actually been permitted. And you can also check to see what inspections have been performed and whether they passed or not.
So that permit for a house in Farragut has to be Farragut's permit,
Yes.
not some, pick it up in Oak Ridge and bring it on over here.
No, you'll definitely be able to tell it's Farragut's permit. It'll have the Farragut logo on it. It'll say it's town of Farragut on its permit. Yeah. But if you don't know, you can call our office. And we've also got a website, and it's got a lot of stuff on it that we talked about tonight. And we're going to continue to add stuff to that website.
So if you have a house built and 6 months the water heater fails, the builder sends somebody back to replace that water heater. I need to see a permit.
Yes, sir.
from them.
Yes, sir. send a different plumber out. Then when that plumber maybe they.
Right?
Sir?
Doesn't matter.
No, it wouldn't matter, you still have to get a permit.
Yeah.
Either way, you have to get a permit, yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain the insulation on the footers, the slab or the footers, do you have to have the insulation?
Yeah, on the slab foundation, whenever you put your footers in, after you put in your block walls, then you have to put an insulation underneath the slab. And it's usually a foam board, and you put it in 24 inches wide, and it has to go all the way around the perimeter of the slab.
So it lays flat?
It lays flat, yes. Yeah, and then they come in over top of that and put in the vapor barrier and then pour the concrete. And another thing I meant to mention, I forgot to, was handouts and stuff. We are currently working on a lot of new handouts, things that will be posted on our website and available for, whoever needs it. We're going to be covering a lot of different topics, everything from anchor bolts to roof framing to decks, radon vents, fall protection, egress. There's going to be a lot of handouts. And as we get them done, we'll start posting online. We're also putting together a booklet. It's just a small booklet, about 20 pages or so, but it'll outline the permitting process, all the inspections, and kind of what's required from you to us in order to get the permits. And then after you get the permit, what inspections you need to call in, how to go about doing that. It's just kind of a brief overview, and it has a lot of reference to a lot of the code in the back. So if you had questions about specific items, you could go back there, see where it's at in the code book, and then go get the code book and look it up and find it.
Where will we get the book? Where will I get the book?
Well, the book you have to buy from the International Code Council. Yeah.
There's some read-only versions that you can look at.
Yeah, there's some free versions out there that don't include the whole text, but that's something you have to go get from the International Code Council. We can't put it up on the site because of copyright infringement.
And the public library also keeps those, and we keep a copy. If you want to come and read it, we have a copy here, you can read it if you like. Anytime we're open, you can come and look at the code.
It's easy if y'all read it and tell us if we like it.
Well, there too. Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
Could you just clarify from on a water heater replacement or an HVAC replacement, do they always have a final inspection? Or do they just have it permanent?
And you'll have an inspection. You'll get it permitted, and they will have an inspection. They have to have an inspection.
Usually on a water heater or a package unit, it's one inspection. But we recently, I think John and I went out on a water heater 3 or 4 times between us before the time it passed. It was ridiculous.
Well, it started out with unlicensed.
Yeah.
It started out with an unlicensed plumber. It was done wrong. And then it started out with a licensed plumber. After that, it went to a licensed plumber, and then even they done it wrong. So just because they're licensed don't mean they don't need an inspection, because we want to make sure that they still put it in correctly.
What if you buy a house and you don't know if it was installed right or whatever, would it be good to have Greg come out and look at it?
We do courtesy inspections, but also we suggest that you get a home inspector before you buy.
And we did that.
Okay.
And he would have done that?
It should have raised some red flags. If there was something out of the ordinary.
If you've got questions, you can always ask. We don't care.
We're planning a bathroom remodel where we're going to install a shower. And the shower is planned to be one of the curbless that has a drain, not a curb, okay? And so the Tyler has asked about specific Farragut codes that pertain to how that shower bed has to be built up and membranes and so on. Is there some description that is available for specific to showers that are installed with no curbs? So the drain is some linear drain, say?
I can't think of it. Usually, there's so many different ways you can do it. It depends on what they're installing, who's installing it. There's different liners, there's different fans. There's a lot of different ways of doing that, so I'm not sure, John.
Well, you always, of course, you gotta have fall down to the drain. You don't want the drain above the floor, because obviously that's not gonna work, or water from the pond and stay in it all the time, then you're gonna end up with a fouling condition. And so, you usually want at least about a 1/16 of an inch fall per foot down to that drain. Of course, you wanna have a 2-inch drain there. That's code requirement. It's in the plumbing code. The plumber should, if it's something the manufacturer is selling, if it's a product, then you have to go with the manufacturer's guidelines. Otherwise, there is some code requirements in the plumbing code for the shower.
So that's just in the plumbing code?
Yes, sir.
That's available on the Farragut site?
Well, I don't know if we got the plumbing code. I know we have a building code, but you're more than welcome to come and look at the code anytime you want if you'd like to. Or even, you can, a lot of times you can get online and get the code online. A lot of times you can't copy it, but you can read it. And it's International Code Council who publishes the codes now. It's an international code. So you ever heard people say, oh, we don't know what code to work off of because you got the Southern Building Code up here, you got the uniform over here, you got this other code over here. Well, we all went together and created an international code now. So everybody's pretty much on the same code all over the nation now. And it's actually going worldwide now. They're using it in Chile, where that earthquake happened. They're using it in Japan, and they're actually using it in a lot of other larger cities, more modern cities too.
When putting in a septic field, tank, where does the county health department get out of the picture if you all live there?
Yeah.
Okay. We go 3 foot out of the house, and then after that, it's the health department. They lay out your drain field and your septic tank and all that. We take care of what's happening inside the house.
Within 3 feet of the house inside, you don't.
Yes, sir.
I'm still a little bit uncertain about what has to be permitted. I understand
Sure.
if you make a big mistake.
Well, no, there's no dumb questions, so please ask.
Oh, yeah, there are.
No.
Yeah. The water heater, if you really mess up, can become a pressure vessel. But
Sure.
where else in a plumbing system, if it's not brand new construction, is a permit needed?
Anytime you run any new plumbing, I mean, if you're just if you're doing repairs, you don't have to have it. If, say, you have a plumbing stop, you know what a stop is. If that stop goes bad or starts leaking, that doesn't require a permit. But if you run a new pipe in the walls and it's going to get concealed, that requires a permit and an inspection. We don't want you to have a leak. We want to make sure they're using the right material, and we want to make sure that material is protected adequately in case that way when you go back and put sheetrock over, someone didn't drop a nail in, you go.
So, and you concealed or to be concealed pipe.
Yes, sir. That's a good way to put it. And we'll look at, if they're putting in a drain system, we'll look at the drain and make sure that's code compliant. There's a lot of things you could really do wrong with drain systems if they're not put in right. And then you smell sewer gas in your house also. That's not good. Not sanitary, and you probably wouldn't be very pleasant.
Any other questions? These are all great questions, by the way. I mean, I have been with these fellas for, this will be year number 5 this July, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't learn something new. And there's been quite a few things that I have stopped in progress at my parents' house and said, whoa, hold on, we're dead. We got to think about this for just a second. So it's all very valuable stuff. And I'm sure there will be questions that will come up after a while, but like John and Elliot and Adam have been saying, all it does is take a phone call or come on down and visit us sometime. Because really that's what it is. It's just the questions at the moment. As a fire inspector, I don't necessarily get to come out to 1- and 2-family dwellings very often. It's under very specific conditions that I come out and visit you. But they asked me to talk tonight on the concept of making sure that we take advantage of just some very basic, simple technology that's been around since the 70s to make sure that we're trying to be as safe as we can, especially if you're going to go through and make an investment on upgrading your home, or renovating your home, or putting an addition on your home. And the first of which is smoke alarms. All right. The current code, the current residential code, since the '06 code was adopted, requires that a smoke alarm be installed in new construction in every sleeping room, outside every sleeping room, and at least one on every floor of the home if there is more than one floor. This is a suggested best practice, but I guarantee you we'll all go home today and we'll say to ourselves, well, I don't have one in each of my bedrooms, and that's fine. It depends on the code that your home was constructed in. We always suggest people to exceed that, but we want to make sure that the equipment that you do have, or the equipment that you choose to install, make sure that you're safe, that you're also maintaining it on a regular basis. Smoke alarms need to be tested at least once a month. There's that little fancy little test button on there, okay, and that's a wonderful thing. But we want to make sure that we're changing that battery at least once a year. If we want to do it twice, that's awesome. But in all actuality, the reason that we kept telling people that we wanted to change it twice a year was because Energizer Battery wanted to sell more batteries. That is completely honest. All right. The fire service only recommends that you change the battery once a year. Pick a favorite date. In my parents' house, it's December 20th, because on the 21st, everybody starts showing up. Mom wants to make sure they're all good to go. So on the 20th, I'm over there with a ladder. Myself and my son, we're just running around changing about a half dozen of the smoke alarm batteries. So that's what we do. But we change them at least once a year. And as you have an opportunity, you should go around cleaning the house every day or every month, whatever you guys got in your schedules. Is just run a vacuum cleaner up on them. Get all those little bugs and critters and try to make little homes in there. All right? Just get that dust out of there because it will extend the serviceable life of your device. Now, as far as service life goes, 10 years. Maximum service life for a smoke alarm. All right? And that includes the ones that are installed that are hardwired in your homes. If you have a monitoring or a monitored security service that also monitors your smoke alarms, every 10 years those devices need to be replaced. All right? Over time, the testing that's done independently by UL and other laboratories of that such, 10 years is about the serviceable life of the detection device. When you start to go past 10 years, they don't work reliably enough. So to make sure that they're going to work properly, you want to have those changed every 10 years. As far as installing them, there's a big note on here because there are a lot of places in the home that they have to be in. Kitchens or close to kitchens, we want to make sure they're at least 6 feet away from any appliance. That's that pesky little steam coming off the stovetop. All right, the accidental. I've got two fire extinguishers in my house. That's how accidental cook I am. All right. So if you have it too close to your kitchen appliances, they may have errant alarms that will activate due to whatever's going on in the kitchen. All right. By keeping them at least 6 feet away, it limits that and keeps them in service.
Turn this off. Wowzers. Come on now.
Battery dead. That's awful.
We got to make it every 6 months.
All right.
Put that down. There you go.
Leave it to my half of it. Okay. The next little piece of equipment, and if anybody has any fuel-fired appliances in their home, that's wood fireplaces, wood-burning stoves, gas heat, and that includes for cooking or for heating your home, whether it be water heat or whatever the case may be. If you have a fuel-fired appliance in your home, you need to have carbon monoxide detection. Carbon monoxide detection is required under the new code. That's one of those things that we need to make sure that we're installing. It's a very inexpensive safety device that over the life of your home, the life of your family, is a very, 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 very rewarding investment if you were to have a carbon monoxide issue. Now, what is carbon monoxide? It's odorless, colorless gas. All right, it is a byproduct of combustion. Most of the time, where we see large buildups of CO is when your fuel burning appliance is not burning correctly or not completely. Right? So the ways to prevent carbon monoxide in your home in overabundance is to make sure that your gas-fired appliances, your fuel-fired appliances are being serviced per the manufacturer's included instructions. All right, and that preventive maintenance schedule is done routinely. Your furnaces are checked, for instance. Mine is a perfect example of that. It quit on us in the middle of Christmas season many years ago. And I called my guy out, and he called me. He says, I need you to come to the house right now. And I came to the house, He says, I can't even force your burner to come on at that often. I said, wow, that's not cool. All right, so doing some preventative maintenance and putting it on a regular schedule to make that appliance work to its best and optimal performance level will help reduce the CO in your home. All right, you want to make sure that you have at least a detection device on the level where the appliance exists, and at least a detection device outside, which is sleeping area in your home, to provide you the best warning, especially if you're sleeping, that there may be a carbon monoxide emergency. Just like smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarm were to activate in your home, the best scenario is to just get out of your house. All right, get out. There's a reason why it's gone off. It's not understanding what that is in the immediate. It's best to go outside to fresh air, get some fresh air, figure out kind of what's going on. If you're concerned that it might be a gas problem, for instance, if you have gas fire appliances supposedly burning, that your gas appliances aren't burning correctly, one of the things you can do is call, in this area, KUB or LCUB or First Utility District, whoever is in charge of your gas utility, and have them come out. They'll have meters, they'll be able to check your home, and they'll be able to figure out kind of pinpoint where the leak is. Does anybody have questions about smoke alarms or CO detection? No? Okay. One of the other things that I wanted to mention tonight, and take the opportunity to mention tonight as we kind of wrap up here, before we have a chance, the opportunity to mingle and have cookies and some refreshments, is residential fire sprinklers. It would behoove me as a fire service professional to always take an opportunity in this kind of environment is to talk about and maybe dispel some myths about residential fire sprinklers. Currently, the state of Tennessee, the legislature has removed the requirement from the residential code that requires residential fire sprinklers. And residential fire sprinklers is still, though it's actually old technology and in the residential community, it's been around in the last 10, 12 years. And there are some subdivisions, some plenty of developments here in Farragut that are sprinkled. And so we have had some developers that have done this to their properties with some success, and homeowners that are currently living with sprinklers in their homes. So it is likely that someone may have a question. What I do is I have a little video I want to show you guys real quick, and then if anybody has any questions about residential fire sprinklers, I'm more than welcome to try to answer them for you. Adam, if you could click the Marble Mountain logo on there, that should pop right up for us. The video itself is about 8 minutes, and then we'll see if anybody has any final questions. And if you want to hit the mute button on the keypad there. Right here. Maybe.
People who die, children who die, or someone's child. Property is one thing to save, but a human life's another.
Orange County Fire Authority had a unique opportunity to show the effectiveness of residential sprinklers at a Tustin Air Station. We took two buildings that were fire loaded the same, which means the combustible material inside the buildings were as close to identical as possible. The only difference between the two was one was equipped with fire sprinklers while the other was not.
This room is furnished to represent a typical bedroom. There are pictures on the wall, drapes covering the windows, a bed with pillows and blankets, as well as other items. The fire is started in a trash can. As the fire grows, it starts to make a run up the drapes. It takes just 60 seconds to activate the smoke alarm down the hall. As the temperature rises and the toxic smoke becomes dense, your chance of survival decreases by the second. The temperature in the room has risen so fast that your next breath would sear the lining of your lungs if the toxic smoke hasn't already taken your life. Listen closely. You can hear the hallway smoke alarm melting as the fire, radiant heat, and smoke spread throughout the rest of the structure. This time, smoke and flames attract neighbors' attention.
Fire emergency. I'm walking watching my residence at 6830 Cooper Stallion, and there's fire and smoke actually coming out of an upstairs window.
Once the 911 call has been received, it will take approximately 6 minutes until the first unit arrives on scene. It is now 13 and a half minutes into the burn, and the entire room is engulfed in flames. As firefighters enter the structure, they must first extinguish fire that has spread throughout the building, and then make their way towards the point of origin. In this room, the smoke alarm was placed in the bedroom and activates 10 seconds after ignition. In the previous burn, the smoke alarm was located in the hallway and took approximately a minute to activate. We see the same fire behavior displayed as before, as it rises from the trash can and continues to grow and become hotter. As it grows and consumes the combustibles on the wall, the fire begins to roll across the ceiling. The sprinkler then activates, cooling down the room, and within minutes puts out the fire. Keep in mind, in the previous burn, the fire department didn't even arrive until 6 minutes after the 911 call.
Common sense would tell you that sprinklers are a good thing, but I had no idea of how dramatic sprinklers can be in actually putting out fires without the presence of firefighters.
On the non-sprinklered side, there was total devastation. The only thing that remained was the frame of the bed and wire hangers in the closet where the clothes once hung.
The fire gutted the entire room. When you looked at the damage throughout the rest of the structure, what I thought was interesting was there was still a substantial amount of damage, but there was no what we call fire loading in the rest of the building, which would mean furniture and other combustibles. So it completely destroyed that entire room.
In fire prevention, what really surprised us was the temperature. And not the temperature at the ceiling, which we expected to rise quickly, but how quickly the temperature rose at the lower levels. Within 2 minutes, it was over 200 degrees, which made it an untenable space. On the sprinkler side, it was a completely different story. As the fire moved up the walls and started lapping at the ceiling, the sprinkler activated and extinguished the fire within a very short period of time.
We had a little bit of scorched on the wall, some damage to the container where the origin of the fire was in the trash can, and a little bit of water, and that was pretty much it.
There's no question that fire sprinklers save lives. There's no question that they work. The reason why you don't hear about it is that it is a non-news event, in that nobody dies, seldom is there an injury, and there's very little property damage. We'll respond units. By the time we get there, we cancel the rest of the units, a small mop-up operation, and that's all that's done.
I understand that developers, people who build homes and apartments and commercial buildings, have a lot of heartburn over sprinklers because they do add cost, they add expense to construction. But I would suggest to you that any developer, any builder who actually sees a demonstration, a real-life demonstration of what sprinklers do will change their mind rather quickly.
What really convinced me was how quickly the sprinklers attacked the fire, how quickly the temperatures dropped, and it would have given, I think, any occupant a reasonable opportunity to get out.
This is one of those add-ons that is just a kind of a no-brainer, it seems to me. Yeah, you're going to pay another, $1,500, $2,000, $2,500 in the price of your home for sprinklers, but look what you get for it. I mean, people are paying far more than that kind of money for some ridiculous cosmetic improvements in their homes, and they pay it willingly.
People see fire sprinklers portrayed differently in the Hollywood movies. For example, you might see the prankster who lights a match and lights off a sprinkler head, and the whole building, all the sprinklers start spraying water, and that just doesn't happen. It's just the one sprinkler head over the fire, And as the fire grows, there may be a few other sprinkler heads that activate, but you don't have the deluge throughout the entire structure like they portray in the movies.
Residential fires are not only dangerous to civilians, but to firefighters as well.
When you see what it is that firefighters have to do and the risk they have to place themselves to fight a fire that otherwise would have been out before they even arrived, you know, it's frightening. It's so dangerous, and this eliminates the danger. Eliminates it.
The advantage to having a residential sprinkler system installed is that's basically like having a full-time firefighter 24/7 on duty right there in every single room of your house, ready to activate at any given moment, and they will have that fire extinguished before the fire department even arrives.
I think if city councils had an opportunity to see the demonstration that I saw, and if OCFA could present information on the actual cost, that I believe that the majority of councils would be convinced that their residents would be protected by residential fire sprinklers at a minimal cost.
A month after this demonstration, Orange County experienced two similar residential fires, both starting in the kitchen. During the first fire, a young female teenager was taking an afternoon nap while the fire advanced through the house and took her life. 2 weeks later, a 6-month-old baby girl was left unattended in a high chair when a fire ignited. As the fire grew, fire sprinklers activated, sparing the child's life.
Here we live in one of the most technologically advanced nations in the world, and yet we're allowing people to die in residence because of no sprinklers. I mean, every fire that I've gone to where there's been a fatality, had there been fire sprinklers there, not only would the damage been minimized, but the person would be alive to tell about that.
Any developer, any builder who actually sees a demonstration, a real-life demonstration of what sprinklers do will change their mind rather quickly. You cannot put a price on life.
Well, and there are probably questions. I'm going to make a couple of statements here real quick as we kind of wrap up and field other questions that everybody might have. Residential fire sprinklers, depending on the way they're designed and installed in your home, they do not work like commercial sprinklers. All right. The design of the system is to allow you as the resident, you as the homeowner, your family living in there, to exit your home. It is a life safety feature. All right. It provides safety for you to exit your home. All right. 99 times out of 100, it's enough water at the area where the fire ignited to actually extinguish the fire. That's what statistics and surveys show. Right? But it's really designed as a life safety feature to provide you as the occupant a safe mode of egress out of your home. Right? Most of the time, the system is plumbed to regulate regular utility water coming into your home. But there are some people living in remote areas, like for instance, Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge, right here down the road in Tennessee, where their systems are on tanks, water tanks. So those tanks have to carry enough water for a certain period of time. All right, and it just depends on the system. So as the video did state, the water doesn't go throughout the entire house. It's very localized to where the actual fire ignited, where the source of the heat is at the time that the sprinkler bulb heats up to the point where it shatters and then drops water right there where the heat is. Does anybody have any other? Yes, sir, please.
So how does it affect your homeowner's insurance?
And that's a very good question, and I really wish that I had a perfect answer for that. But this is the way I'm going to answer it. Depending on your homeowner's insurance, I always encourage everyone to call their agent and ask them. Depending on who you have, I have heard of people having anywhere from 5% to 25% off of their homeowner's insurance. But because there is no uniformity across the insurance providers across the country, there's no internal savings. There is no savings portrayed to the consumer. Right? If there were to be, and this is one of the things that fire service coalitions across the United States are trying to do, is try and get up these partnerships, these vested interest parties, to come to understand that if there is a uniformed savings in your homeowner's insurance, that over a 4, 5, 10-year period recoups the cost of putting it in your home then why would we not do this? It makes perfect sense. But yeah, it depends. It depends. State Farm, I have heard, gives anywhere from 5 to 10%. It just depends on who underwrites that policy, as an example. Now, oh yes, sir, please.
Location. What about in your kitchen?
Okay, in your home, a residential fire sprinkler system does not cover every part of your home. It is just the occupiable parts of your home. Bedrooms, kitchen, family room, living room, those sorts of things. No closets, no garages, things like that. All right, it's just the areas of your home that are going to be heated by your building's central heat and air, for instance. All right. You can design your home to have it all encompassed by your sprinkler system if you so choose. But yes, there would be sprinklers designed for your kitchen, and what you're probably going to ask, let me see if I've got my Kreskin hat on, is, so if I'm cooking in there and it's hot and it's the middle of July, what's going to keep that bulb from going off and having a shower when I'm trying to eat my dinner? All right. What it does is that there is a chart within these systems are designed by a design professional, an engineer, all right? And what it does is it takes the average mean temperature for what exists in that room, all right? And then the bulb has to be a percentage higher than that. So on average, your average residential sprinkler bulb activates at about 155 to 156 degrees, depending on the bulb manufacturer. So the fire needs to reach that temperature heat before it activates. So if you're trying to save a bunch of money in the summertime and you have that thermostat set up real high, you may have some problems, but majority of the time, you're going to be still well within a very decent safety range, even if you're trying to save a little money when you've got your thermostat set to 77 or 78.
And I think another thing Colin's trying to say there is that if you have a special condition, you bring it up with your installer, your designer, and they might up that limit on with another kind of bulb in the head. He might take it up 10 more degrees, 15 more degrees, just to give them some cushion. We have that happen a lot in commercial applications too, where you have an area that might be a little higher heat level than the other area, but typically they'll all be the same. They've already counted for that.
And in fact, one of those special conditions in a commercial environment, believe it or not, walk-in coolers in restaurants. You see yourself, why would I need a higher temperature head in a walk-in cooler? It's cold, first of all. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. But in the temperature control for that walk-in freezer, as it frosts and defrosts in that cycle, all right, if the bulb isn't of a higher temperature, and basically what it means is the bulb is just a thicker piece of glass at that point. Okay, it'll take more pressure from the boiling liquid inside before it shatters. That higher temperature head in that thicker glass bulb will survive a lot of that frost and defrost cycle. So we've actually had a few restaurants here in town that have experienced that, and that was what eventually the code realized throughout the entire country needed to happen. So believe it or not, there are higher temperature heads inside walk-in coolers than there are inside the rest of the restaurant. Any other questions? Yes, sir, please.
Last one, does anybody ever do retrofits?
Yes, there are. Yes, retrofits do occur, and it's probably leading into your next question. I'm going to see if I can bat 5,000 on my Kreskin. How much does it cost? All right. Right now, and I have to admit my information is a bit dated. This is about 18 to 24 months old. In the state of Tennessee right now, it's somewhere between $1.50 to $2 a square foot as a retrofit. If you start looking at stick-built construction, you drop from like $1.75 to $1.25 brand new, right, as you're building your home. Most of the time, with the type of equipment and products that are now currently available for residential sprinklers, I have heard from a sales rep, so you got to understand that he's trying to tell me about his product, that their product, they come in when everybody's done working, and they work overnight, and they install it, and the guys come back the next day, and it's done, and they can continue building your home.
That's building a new home. I'm talking
Yes,
about an already built, lived-in home for 25
Yes,
years.
and you can retrofit it, and like I said, the dollar amount value that I've heard is anywhere from $1.50 to $2 a square foot, and the system is now, with the technology, what you saw in the video were ceiling pendants, much like the ones that are in this one, okay? But what happens is, those now are sidewalls, so as long as, like, from your attic, you can reach reach the void spaces and the wall cavities in your home, then what they'll do is they'll run it in the attic and then drop it down, and they're actually sidewalls stuck outside. The other thing that you have is under the concealed plates, they have now concealed plates. So they're recessed inside your ceiling with a plate that you can't have ordered to match the color of your ceilings. And then once the fire reaches a certain level, let's say it's 156 degree head, somewhere between 100 and 156, the retaining clips for the plate fall away, the head drops from the ceiling, and then at 156 it activates and then puts water in the room at the scene of fire. All right, so there's lots of wonderful technology out there that's coming out. It seems like every other month somebody's got a new product, a new way to do it. So it's out there. And there are vendors here in Knoxville that do this work. And the way they're kind of going is this trend, Uponor, which does PEX material, which is flexible water piping now. The way they've tried to market their product is that you go to Lowe's or Home Depot with architectural plans of your home, and you contact their rep there at the site. They gather some information, get plans to your home to them. They have an engineer that does then the plans and a cut sheet for every bit of piece of equipment that you need, and then you buy that and then have it installed. Now, where the Tennessee does, like we've been talking about all day, for as far as codes go and inspections to make sure things are done correctly, Tennessee, as far as sprinkler goes, that equipment has to be installed or signed off on by a licensed sprinkler contractor. And part of that licensed sprinkler contractor use is that it incurs an inspection by the inspection authority, which would be here fairly. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to come out and we're going to dump water in your house. We need to test a few things to make sure it's alarming and doing the way it's supposed to, with some drain tests. And then we'll just go over to the individual homeowner that maintenance and upkeep, which is really very simple. Excellent questions. So I've done this presentation a couple, 3 times, you probably can tell. But these are the best questions tonight, honestly, seriously. Any other questions anybody might have?
Who's buried in Grant's tomb?
Well, I saw that on the Discovery Channel. I was told it wasn't Grant. Does anybody have any questions at all about the presentation, building code or fire code questions that we can try to help you with?
One other question. I noticed on the accessory building,
yes, sir.
You stressed that your primary concern was the setback.
Yes, sir.
In terms of subdivisions that have homeowners' rules that may be subject to interpretation, does the town get involved, or are they strictly concerned with meeting setback or any other structural?
If you've got restricted covenants, we don't enforce those. We don't get involved with that. So you need to go to those people. If you have an architectural review board with that subdivision or whatever kind of homeowner association you have that you have to deal with, you need to go talk to them too. And we try to tell people that when they do stuff like that. You know, if you're in a subdivision, if you're not in a subdivision, typically you're not going to have that. Usually buildings that are smaller, that are just accessory types, the code says those do not have to meet a code standard. Once you get up to the size of a garage, though, even though it's detached, that does have to meet code requirements. So it's limited to small buildings, usually 200 to 300 square feet. Once you get much over that, then we're going to consider that to be somewhat habitable if all you're going to do is park a vehicle in it, or maybe have a workshop in there or something like that. But you always could have the possibility of having a setback issue or a lot coverage issue if you're on one of these subdivisions that got really small condensed lots like Ellie was talking about earlier. Then there are some lot coverage restrictions on some of those lots also because they're already pretty small to start with.
And is there any...
if you're doing a swimming pool, that requires a permit. Just throw that out there. But anything else?
In terms of that accessory building, is there a definition of what the foundation consists of?
For an accessory building? Not really. We like to recommend people put a foundation down that would prevent it from blowing away, and so we'll make some recommendations on that. But once you get above that 200 or so square feet, then you have to start meeting code again. So hopefully that's not a big enough building to be a big deal. But once you get beyond that size, then you're looking at something that's got to start meeting code requirements. Is that what it is now? I couldn't remember. It's small. But like if you had a little outbuilding you store your lawnmower in or something like that, it doesn't have to meet a code requirement.
And if you wanted to put up a 300 square foot shed?
We would probably want that to meet some code. It wouldn't take much to meet code with that because it's going to be pretty small. The spans are going to be pretty small. And so if you buy either a kit or you decide to build it yourself, we can help you with drawings on that. That's pretty simple.
There's no definite, I mean, you could put it on concrete blocks or you could use on.
Yeah, you could do that.
Whatever you want.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Like I say, no questions are done questions. So if you have something later, call us. You know, and if somebody tells you you don't need a permit and you're hiring them to do some work in your house, you can check with us. It's a free phone call. You know, and most of the time you won't even have to talk to an inspector because if let's say you're having a heat and air unit put in your house and the guy says, no, I don't need a permit for that. Well, you do. But if there's any question, typically just the reception that's going to answer the phone, she knows those things. And if you call her and say, I'm putting a water heater in my house, or I'm putting a furnace in my house, or I'm putting a set of gas logs in my house, those have to be permitted. She can tell you right off the bat. You don't even have to talk to an inspector. I can tell you right now, it's got to be permitted. So make sure they get a permit, make sure they get an inspection, and you know, make them show you the permit. Or if they can't show you the permit, if they say they've lost it or something like that, call our office. We can check it for you.
Could you talk just briefly about what does and doesn't require a license? So the permits is one thing, inspection is something else, license requirements is different.
It is. Okay. In the state of Tennessee, there's, I think, 8 or 9 counties, based on their population, I think there are over 50,000 people. There's a homeowner's remodeling license required. So if you're doing any home remodeling and it's $3,000 or more, up to $24.99, it requires at least a remodeler's license or more. But you need to at least have a remodeler's license. The town has a licensing requirement for subcontractors. So we go off the state requirements for that because it takes it down pretty low, so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel and write a new ordinance for that. Okay, for plumbers and for mechanical contractors, we have a licensing board, and we require them to be licensed. Now, they can actually be licensed through us up to a certain dollar amount, or the state of Tennessee, once they contract over certain numbers, then they have to be licensed in the state of Tennessee also.
Can you make your answer a little more personal? Like me, what can I do, what can I not do?
For yourself, on your own home?
Yeah.
On your own home, you can do pretty much, as long as you're doing it. That's the stipulation. As long as you're doing it, you can do all the work you want on your own home. I don't recommend you put in a heat and air system unless you know something about it. But if you do, that's fine. We've had people that knew enough about that kind of stuff, and they put in on their own stuff, you know, because they've done it all their life. And so if you're a builder, or say you're a retired builder, and you want to build your own home, you can do that. Now, and you can even be your own contractor to subcontractors. I recommend if you do that, when you're building your own home, the state of Tennessee allows you to build one home every 2 years. That's the law. And so if you're building your own home and you're hiring subcontractors, I'd do 2 things. I would have my own insurance, but I'd also make sure those guys had insurance and they were licensed.
So still need permits, still need inspection.
Still needs all the permit
I can do my own work.
You can.
You have to sign an affidavit.
You have to do it, though.
You have to complete an affidavit saying that you're accepting all responsibility for the construction, that you're doing it yourself, and you're not licensed or insured.
I'm not sure what that affidavit means.
It's basically saying you're taking responsibility for everything and you're doing it yourself.
Right, but I mean, I still have to have it inspected.
Oh, yeah.
You still have to have all that, yeah.
Right, so you're gonna find out whether I do what I was doing or not.
Oh, yeah, yeah, we'll know that pretty quick.
But it's also in those cases where someone may start a job and then contract with someone because they got in a little bit over their heads.
Right.
Once they do that, then that person needs to have a license. I mean, that's because now the job has changed.
And some people will say they're doing it, but then they'll turn around and they'll sub it out anyway. Well, then if there's an issue or a problem, you can't go back and get that sub, or you can't, there's no recourse because you signed that affidavit saying you're responsible for everything.
So we have to go to you because you're the permit holder. Yeah, that
So it puts all liability back on you.
So there's some give and take there. There's some risk to take when you do that. But it is allowed. You're exactly right. I built my own home. Built every home I've ever lived in. I know a few things about it.
How'd you get it inspected?
Well, that wasn't in this jurisdiction, so I called it inspected. Yeah, I had inspections, I sure did. Quite interesting. It wasn't bad at all. Anybody got any other questions? Well, thanks for coming out. And again, if we can answer questions later on, just call us or come by and see us.
Yes,